Welcome to the sound test machine for Plantronics. Step 2. Selecting the best.
This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself.
To continue this call, press 1. To end this call, press pound or hang up. To transfer to customer service, press 0.
This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1-2-3-4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself.
To continue this call, press 1. To end this call, press pound or hang up.
This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself.
To continue this call, press 1. To end this call, press pound or hang up. To transfer to customer service.
This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself. This is a test of the listening volume adjustment on your Plantronics headset base unit. This message will repeat to allow you to try different settings of the 1, 2, 3, 4 switch to determine the most comfortable listen volume. When you are satisfied with your listen volume setting, press 1 to move on to the speaking volume step. During normal headset use, you can fine-tune the listen volume by using the adjustment on the headset itself.
Welcome.
Thank you for calling. May I please have your passcode? Okay, sir, can you speak up just a little bit for me? Can I have your first and last name? And your affiliation? Affiliate. So NASA HQ? Thank you. One moment. You're welcome. Hello, Andrew. Hello, Andrew. Hello, sir. This is the operator. Hi, did you need an open line or did you need a muted line? Muted? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your patience. Please stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. All participants will be on a listen-only mode until the question and answer portion of today's conference. At that time, you may ask a question by pressing star 1. Please unmute your phone and record your name when hitting star 1. Once again, please stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily.
Good evening and welcome from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Tori McClendon with NASA Communications. We are here to discuss NASA's SpaceX Demo 2 mission. Teams from NASA, SpaceX, and the 45th Weather Squadron just completed the launch readiness review, and we are joined by mission representatives who are going to give us an update. Here with us today are Kathy Lueders, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Kirk Scheierman, Manager of NASA's International Space Station Program, Hans Königsmann, Vice President of Build and Flight Reliability at SpaceX, Norm Knight, Deputy Director of Flight Operations at NASA's Johnson Space Center, and Mike McAleenan, Launch Weather Officer with the 45th Weather Squadron. We will begin with opening comments from our speakers and then open it for questions. To get into the question queue, please press star 1 on your phone. But first, let's hear from the teams. We'll start with Kathy Lueders. Kathy?
So first, thank you for tying in on this. We're continuing to tick off our pre-flight readiness checklist. First, the vehicle checked out very nicely in our static fire. Static fire was full duration. In addition, dry dress, we successfully completed our full crew launch day checkout. It went very smoothly and ahead of schedule. I can't tell you how moving it was for me to see Bob and Doug get in the vehicles and ride out to the pad and realize that the next time was going to be when we were getting ready to launch. Finally, today we had our launch readiness review, and so we're burning down the final paper. All the teams were go, and we're continuing to make progress towards our mission. And now the only thing we need to do is figure out how to control the weather, and I'm hoping that Mike's going to help us out with that when he starts talking. But very proud of the team. We're continuing to be vigilant and careful and make sure we do this right. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Kathy. Now we'll go to Kirk Scheierman.
Good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for tying in. as Kathy said, we were very happy to participate in the launch readiness review this afternoon, and very thorough review. Things are definitely progressing very well. On board the International Space Station this morning, 8:13 a.m. Eastern Time, the ISS crew, Chris Cassidy, actually captured the Free Flyer HTV, so we were really happy to do that, which was important for Demo 2. But perhaps even more important was it was at 11:49 this morning. It was successfully bolted onto ISS, which really gets it out of the way for Demo 2 to come fly. So very happy that onboard operation went well. And finally, the crew couldn't go to sleep without ingressing, so they finished all the work to make sure leak checks passed and set up everything and ingressed this afternoon at 4:25. So great work on orbit. I think the on-orbit crew is definitely ready for some company. Very much looking forward to the launch this Wednesday. In addition, we had an ISS mission management team meeting this morning, which included the ISS team, but it also included all our international partners, and everyone was ready to go. So the ISS team pulled ready to support the docking of Dragon. So great work. Full team participation and readiness, and aside from a little anomaly or two that the team always goes through and works down, burns down, I think everything's ready to go. So very much looking forward to good weather and a successful launch on Wednesday.
Thanks, Kirk. We'll now go to Hans Königsmann.
Yeah, thank you. And like Kathy and Kirk said already, we had a really good, successful launch readiness review, and we go for launch. I would take the opportunity and thank NASA for the opportunity to do this historic mission that brings a human spaceflight back to the U.S. and it's really important for both SpaceX, country, and basically to some extent also humanity and exploration. So I had a couple slides prepared, which I will skip now, and go right to it. So getting Demo 2 ready for flight was a ton of work, and it's just incredible to be here after many years of work. And I think exactly on this day 8 years ago, we either launched the first one that went to the station, or we berthed on the station. I'm not totally sure about this. James told me earlier, and I forgot the detail on that. We berthed, right, on this day, yeah. So that's 8 years ago, just 8 years to some extent, and on the other side also, time flies, right? On Demo 2, we spent many years of development and an incredible amount of testing. We worked a lot with NASA to put everything through its paces. Just recalling the work we spent on parachutes, on NTO compatibility and whatnot. There was a lot of urgent and important work done over the last couple months and years, basically, and all basically concludes in the flight readiness and now in the launch readiness review going into the final launch campaign. At the static fire on Friday, the team reviewed the data over the weekend and reported back at the LRR. No showstoppers, everything looking good, and nothing that would keep us from flying. And I made a dry dress on Saturday with Bob and Doug, like Kathy said, going up the tower and walking the bridge or the tunnel, the arm actually is what we call it, right? And essentially rehearsing launch day. And for me, this was a little bit of a turning point too. When you see people going into the rocket, that is something special. It's I knew that Dragon is not somewhere in a training center or somewhere else on the ground. This is on the rocket, so that was a big deal for. I feel like it had a big impact on everybody in the control center and the team back in Hawthorne too. See the two astronauts taking the seats and start working on the panel, and you hear them basically, and you know this is coming from the rocket. That to me, like I said, it made a big difference and made it very real. And today is late load. We have a small amount of cargo. I think we're already done with that. And then on Wednesday, if the weather gods are working with us, then we have a launch at 4:33. We do have 2 backup days, and I can talk a little bit of what you can see. You will see basically Bob and Doug getting ready in their suits like 4 hours before we launch. They will drive over to LC-39 at about 3 hours before launch, T-3, and then at 2:30 they will get into the capsule, buckle in, and then the rest from there on is somewhat similar than the other launches that we have. We start polling at T-45. We will arm the escape system at that time, and then we begin fueling. The arm retracts, we begin fueling at T-35, and then from then on it's the same automation that fuels the vehicle and launches it on time. We have on orbit, we have 19 hours, if I remember this correctly. There will be a number of orbit raising burns and circularization burns. The one thing that I also remember is there's a manual test, flight test basically for half an hour just before we dock. And that's going to be super interesting to see that. And then we will dock and open the hatch I think 2 hours later, if I remember this correctly. Departure is, well, eventually that schedule is a little bit in flux, and obviously NASA will tell us when we're ready to go. Anywhere between, let's see if I get this right, 6 weeks and 16 weeks, something in that order. Team will get back into Dragon, don their suits, undock, and fly a couple hours and come back and land on the coast in the Atlantic. Basically, it's different from what Cargo Dragon landed in Pacific. We switched over to the Atlantic for landing now because it's closer to KSC and easier to process. Yeah, I'm looking very much forward to all of that. Again, thanks NASA. Really appreciate this. Also like to thank the SpaceX team working super hard over many years. In Hawthorne, our main headquarters, as much as in McGregor, our test site, and then of course here at the Cape where they integrate and launch the vehicle. And also, I wouldn't be sitting here without Elon, so I want to thank him personally too. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Hans. We'll now go to Norm Knight.
Well, let's see. Good evening. Really good review today, and from a crew perspective, we were very happy with the discussions that took place, the thoroughness of the review. We're definitely ready to press forward. The crew had a good dry dress, as Hans said yesterday. That was exciting to walk through and see. It was kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's just to make sure that everything was ready to go, and it turned out very well. So we're very happy with that, and again, looking forward to going forward. Kind of give you a little more detail on Doug and Bob's schedule. Today and tomorrow, they had a series, or will have a series of technical briefs, some follow-up discussions with folks on technical issues. They'll spend some time with their family and friends, which is good, and then obviously get some good night's sleep and prep for launch. Leading up to Wednesday, launch day, they'll get up around 9 a.m. Eastern time. They'll go through a series of medical checks after that. They'll get their breakfast, get prepped, go into the weather briefing around 12:20 in the afternoon, and then, as Hans said, jump into suit up, which will be real exciting shortly after 1 o'clock. They'll depart for the pad around 2:30 in the afternoon, and of course, all leading up to a launch around 4:33 in the afternoon. Things are looking real good. We've been very pleased with the fact that this vehicle looks really clean. The review today, we worked a few issues, but overall it was really good, and we're thankful for that. And I guess I'll just say, you know, we were all here working this Memorial Day, but all of us are very thankful for and honor those in military service who really have paid the ultimate sacrifice for their families, for the veterans, who all provide the umbrella of protection that allow us to do the great things that we do here as a collective team. And because of you, NASA and our commercial partners are going to restore human launch capability back to U.S. soil, which is very exciting to us. So it's a great day, and we're looking forward to the next 2 days leading up to launch.
Thank you, Norm. We'll now go to Mike McLeenan.
All right, well, good evening. First, I want to point out that we're in the weather sales business, not production, so you'll have to talk to somebody else about that part of it. But I will tell you that we're very happy we're not launching today. We've had nearly 2 inches of rain so far along the spaceport, and we're not quite done yet. So it'll be very hard to have this bad weather coming Wednesday. We, of course, have been watching Wednesday closely for as long as the models have gone up that far, for at least 10 days. And it's really been a strange brew of guidance from these models. They have shifted, and it's really a dynamic situation that's developing across Florida. The National Hurricane Center has just issued a 20% chance of this wave that's moving across Florida to develop into a tropical low as it transits along the eastern coast here of Florida into the Georgia, South Carolina area. So it'll be a tight balance of where that low goes exactly, how strong it gets between launch weather versus recovery weather versus abort weather. So it's just going to be difficult to try to match all those together. But I will tell you that certainly it's been trending better over the last day or two for launch weather. If I was to issue the forecast today, right now, we would probably be down to 40% chance of violation. It does look like this low is going to clear out some of that moisture that we are experiencing at this moment, and should pull it off towards the east and north. So we have a little bit more rain to go here, and maybe another round of afternoon thunderstorms with the first leftover moisture tomorrow. But Tuesday afternoon looks like a much less coverage. So we have some hope for launch day, and that low is going to be much further away, and maybe the ridge will build back in by our backup day. So we do have some hope, and that's the trend is heading our way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We will now transition to taking questions. Again, to get into the question queue, please press *1 on your phone. To ensure as many people as possible get the opportunity to participate in today's call, please ask only one question per person. When called upon, please reiterate your name, affiliation, and to whom you're directing your question. We'll now open the floor for questions.
Thank you. Our first question comes from Bill Harwood with CBS News. Your line is open.
Yeah, hi. It's Bill Harwood. I have a question for Mike, if I can. Can you go into a little bit of detail about how you guys compute or calculate, add in the abort weather, the downrange weather, for this launch? I mean, when you guys put a percentage out, I don't think it includes that, does it? Or does it? And how do you come up with a number, or how do you decide it's okay to go given multiple sites downrange where you could possibly end up in the water in the unlikely event of a problem? Thanks.
Sure. Well, I will tell you that this probability, you're right, is only including launch commit criteria for liftoff. We do, when we issue this forecast, it's posted to our website, shows kind of just a risk of the other kind of factors like upper level winds or first stage recovery. Between Space Flight Meteorology Group at Houston and the SpaceX ingesting model data, we provide some guidance and some weather parameters to the SpaceX team, and they calculate the probability of all those abort points. So that's really not part of this launch forecast, but I will pass it to Hans if he wants to add any more about those how that forecast gets together.
Okay, so I have to take it now. Yeah, we take Mike's data, and we have a really complicated way of weighing different locations depending on how much risk they have in terms of an escape, for one, and then also for the landing, there are special parameters, wind, wave, and wave direction, and all these things, and then some of these individually have to go green and be a go, and then on the entire launch corridor we have like a common risk number that we use to basically make an assessment and then get to a go, no-go decision. Just to give you an idea, the briefing this morning on the weather had 65-ish slides going through this, and it took an hour. So it's a lengthy process to get to the best result, getting the safest flight that we can possibly get with the current weather.
Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Chris Davenport with the Washington Post. Your line is open.
Oh, hey guys, thanks so much for doing this. It's Chris Davenport from the Washington Post. Hope the weather clears up for you guys. Question, follow-up from something Kirk said after the FRR. He had mentioned, I think the word he used was maybe a concern that Russia had after Demo 1, and there were some changes made before Demo 2. I was wondering if you could just offer some more details on what the concern was and what the changes were that allayed those. Thanks very much.
Sure. Well, so the concern, because Russia is part of the International Space Station, and hopefully, ultimately, they'll have their crew flying on Dragon. They've been following along the entire process. But so we look at the nominal vehicle design. We also look at failures, and there was a failure scenario, a very low probability of a failure scenario associated with Dragon, and it didn't have. In that failure scenario, there was a potential of colliding with the ISS. So in Demo 1, because it was such a low probability, what we decided to do was close off some hatches to protect the ISS in this low probability of occurrence. And we talked with SpaceX, and they agreed that they would make a modification. So they actually made a modification to the design of the Dragon so that if that low probability of occurrence occurred, they actually had a backup system that would then fire some thrusters and move the Dragon away. So that's basically it. There was a failure the first time that could cause the Dragon to basically be uncontrolled, or basically we call it a ballistic trajectory, but basically coasting in. We accepted it for the Demo 1, and between Demo 1 and today, SpaceX has designed that system, implemented it, and verified it. So a tremendous effort by SpaceX, and our Russian colleagues are very pleased with that additional protection.
Okay, next question.
Our next question comes from Amanda Maley with ABC News. Your line is open.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time. Just given all the concerns about weather, how late on Wednesday can you make the decision whether or not to either delay or cancel the launch?
Okay, let me think about this a little bit. So it's usually when we have a satellite to launch, then we go sometimes all the way down the wire, right, to the last minute, and then Mike says no, and then we don't go. In this case, we don't want to do that because we would expose the crew to risk that would be unnecessary. So we're going to weigh this like in like 6 hours before, 4 hours before, and then I guess the final call comes at the end at 45 minutes when we're about to arm the escape system, and that is basically by that time we have come to a conclusion whether we go and no go.
Thank you. Next question.
Our next question comes from Marcia Dunn with Associated Press. Your line is open.
Yes, hello. This question is for Hans, please. Hans, the stakes have never been higher for SpaceX, and you talked about how important this mission is to the company and also to humanity and exploration, and I'd like a little more elaboration. What does this flight mean for SpaceX, and what do you see it as how it paves the way for human exploration at large? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia. Yeah, I mean, we have been founded, with the idea of human spaceflight and basically in our basic laws, so to speak. And then, if you recall, the first Cargo Dragon, which clearly was a Cargo Dragon, we put a window on so that people would not forget about it. And so everything in our trajectory is towards that particular moment to launch people on a spaceship, and it's a huge step, obviously, going from cargo and from even expensive cargo and important cargo to launching two people that are dads, as we call them, and have families, kids, wives, and spouses. I mean, and everything. So. It puts yourself, basically, you projected yourself, and you think yourself, you would be now on this rocket, right? And you put yourself in their shoes, basically, or in their helmets, and that changes the equation pretty dramatic, actually. And when NASA told us that a couple of years ago, I was at the beginning, okay, we got to deal with that, right? And as we get closer and closer, I realized, that actually makes a big difference. And every once in a while, I'm pretty sure that's the same for everybody working at SpaceX. We have to just keep our head low and work the problem, and not freeze and light of that responsibility, which we take very serious. So I think at the end of the day, we ended up with a really great vehicle and great rocket. I hope everything will go smooth, and also the weather will play along, and this will be a successful mission. And we learned a lot along the way.
Next question.
Yes, our next question comes from Joey Roulette with Reuters. Your line is open.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Question for anyone who'd like to answer. I was wondering if somebody could give a timeline or kind of like a background on what Bob and Doug will be doing in the hours leading up to liftoff. I think someone said they'll be heading out to the pad at 2:30, or I don't know if they would be going into the vehicle at 2:30. Just some clarity on that timeline would be great. Thanks.
Okay, this is Norm. I'll give you some more of the details. These are approximate times, but again, the crew gets up around 9 a.m. Their weather brief, this is Eastern time, their weather brief will be around 12:20 p.m. They'll start doing suit up shortly after that. They will start walking out, departing the building to head to the pad around 1, maybe 1:15 in the afternoon. They will ingress, as Hans said, around 2 p.m., and then the hatch closes, I think, around 2:38 in prep for a 4:33 p.m. launch.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. Next question.
Yes, our next question comes from Eric Berger with Ars Technica. Your line is open.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and looking forward to the launch on Wednesday. I'm wondering if someone may speak to the backup launch date, why it's 3 days after the original launch date, and then I think Hans mentioned that there was a second backup date as well. Is that the next day, or when is that? Thanks very much.
Yeah. So it's true. The second backup, the third opportunity is the day after. It's on the 31st, and I think the difference, the 2 days in between is just a matter of phasing, and how the orbital mechanics work out. There's some other factors that play into that too. traffic on the station and so on and so forth. But my understanding is that's the next opportunity. The one on the 30th is a 31-hour transit, I believe, and so is the one on the 31st, if I'm, plus minus a little bit. So it just happened to be coincidence that there's 2 days in between where we can't launch.
Thank you. Next question.
Our next question comes from David Curley with Discovery. Your line is open.
Thanks, everybody. I think this is for Kirk. Both Starliner and Dragon have hypergolic fuel. Has a craft ever docked with station with hypergolic fuel? And Steve Jurziak said something about fire suppression issues. Was that in the capsule or on the pad? Thank you.
So actually every vehicle that's docked to ISS is docked with hypergolic. So Shuttle, of course, had hypergolic fuel when it came. The Russian Soyuz vehicles, not only do they have hypergolic fuels, they actually transfer it to ISS. So ISS itself has hypergolic fuels stored on it and uses it for raising its orbit. So dealing with hypergolics is a very normal situation. And the fire suppression was the issue that we were talking. By the way, there's all kinds of fire suppression on the ISS, on the Dragon, and on the ground, but the one that was being discussed last time, I think, was on the Dragon itself. And I could let maybe Hans talk to that issue.
So, because we worked it pretty hard. I mean, it's really about. We had two sets of requirements. We have requirements on the vehicle that says you have to build a vehicle that has materials that aren't flammable, right? That's our number one control to fire, is to have a vehicle that's not flammable. Within, the amounts of oxygen that we typically have in the environment. But then we also had a requirement that we wanted to have a fire suppression system. And so what happened, we did some testing over this last month, and we ended up finding out in particular areas the fire suppression system didn't work as well as we wanted it to work. And so one of the things we had to go do is to go look at those different areas and then really evaluate the ability for the vehicle and the design to be robust to any kind of fire mechanisms in those areas, and then also really understand the materials in those areas to make sure that we were very confident that that those areas were not going to be susceptible to having a fire from a design perspective. So those are the kinds of things we had to work through, and we'll be working with SpaceX over, this next period of time to have the fire suppression system work better in those areas. But that's kind of normal development, us working through it. We'll also learn on orbit how things work a little bit better, and they'll help us through this test flight be able to better update and improve our designs.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Yes, our next question comes from Emory Kelly with Florida Today. Your line is open.
Hey, folks. Thanks for doing this today. Hans, this question's for you. I know it sounds like there are possibly, you mentioned 2 opportunities for the astronauts to take manual control of Crew Dragon. I believe one is far out and one is closer. Could you talk a little bit about, how much freedom, I guess you could say, they'll have while they're doing that, and what exactly they'll do during those manual opportunities? Thanks.
Appreciate the question. I think actually, I don't want to pass it over to Norm, but he has a much better idea of what they do during those times. From our perspective, it's a test to verify that the manual control works, and that we have the opportunity, if there's any issue with the autonomous system, that the astronauts can override it and basically correct for it.
Okay, thanks, Hans. Yeah, there are actually 2 manual flight tests. As the vehicle starts approaching station in the far field, the crew will take manual control and verify that it works. They'll orient the attitude to a certain degree just to make sure that they can do that. As they get closer, as they come up to station in the latter portions of the rendezvous profile, they come up on the V-bar in front of station as they start moving in, and then they will do what's called a near-field test as well, and get kind of a feel for how that system is working, the manual control, and then they put it back in auto and press on in. So there are 2 of those manual flight tests, and that give you a pretty high level on what those entail.
I think what's really cool is Bob and Doug have been on this cadre. You know, they've been working with the team, working with the SpaceX folks to really work and kind of perfect this design. And here, it's why they're on this test mission, right? Because where they're going to actually get to then practice and use the technique that they've been working on for the last 5 years in space and make sure that, you know, will their dream become a reality on how the vehicle works, right? It's why the concept of having this cadre and having this team work together and then getting them to actually test drive the system is pretty cool.
Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Lauren Grush, The Verge. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. I was wondering if you could walk us through the various checkouts and analyses the astronauts will be doing with the Crew Dragon while it's docked to the space station and on orbit. Anything that you'll be looking for, testing for when it's up there? Thanks.
I guess I can start a little bit and then Norm. So one of the things we definitely need to test in space is ECLSS, our environmental control life support system, and there are many things you can test on the ground, but you can't test them under microgravity for like many hours. So obviously that's going to be important. We want to see that the temperatures are stable, humidity is controlled, and carbon dioxide is under control, oxygen is under control, and all these things. Like I said, you can test 99% here, but you got to test the last percent or whatever the fraction is in microgravity. That's one of the first things they do. There's other things in terms of communication and how the whole capsule basically works. That can't follow after that. I don't know exactly what the timetable is on that, but they also only have 19 hours, and on top of that, they actually want to sleep on board too, right? So it's going to be full of tests and time will fly basically on the way. Norm?
Yeah, the good news is that a lot of the demonstrations were performed with the Demo 1 flight test, which was one of the reasons that we were, all happy that vehicle got up and could work off some of these demonstration tests to verify that the rendezvous prox ops were understood better, the thermal was understood better, the docking and attach phase. What we're looking at here is, again, a lot of changes with Demo 2, and as Hans said, we're checking out a lot of these things, everything from the suit that the flight crew will be wearing, how that functions in zero-G, how you get in and out of it, how it functions as far as cooling, the vehicle itself, the ergonomics, the crew displays, the rendezvous docking manual control, or the manual control going into rendezvous. And again, once they get attached, Dragon will be part of and integrated into the International Space Station. It is now part of this bigger unit, so it has to function on board as an integrated module. So there's going to be some tests and checkout relative to putting Dragon in a quiescent state, waking it up, making sure that its systems come back to life as they should. And then, of course, while it's docked, just its overall performance leading up to entry, and then again entry, the deorbit and entry part of flight test as well, on getting the crew back home safely, and again rejoining them with their families. So this is really an end-to-end. It's a flight test, and we're looking at a lot of things. So again, very exciting.
Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Kenneth Chang with New York Times. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering if you could give more details about the conditions you need for the aborts, the weather and the ocean conditions, and is this something that stretches for hundreds or thousands of miles across the Atlantic? And how do you find those conditions?
We can share that. Let me start a little bit. So there's different types of weather condition that would cause an abort. Yeah, there's a range safety requirements. For example, thick clouds. The clouds shouldn't be thick. There's other requirements that are related to I guess lightning and so there's a whole range of safety requirements that we need to comply with, and those are actually the same for every launch. They're not different here than from any other launch. And there's a type of weather requirements that are related to the rocket. Upper level winds have to be in a certain range, and we very carefully look at balloons and measure the wind, and then we know what this is, and then we basically thread the needle along the upper level winds to make this a safe flight. Let's see, what else do we have? We have, like we mentioned earlier, we have escape weather along the ground path in case something happens. We want to make sure that Dragon capsule can land, so the waves should be not too rough, the wind should not be too fast, as an example. And that's a very complicated number that we basically add together. There's buoys along the way, there's global weather pattern, there's models that are similar like what airplanes use, right? And that's how we basically integrate this whole risk along the way and come up with an assessment. There's also obviously an onshore component on wind that's important to us in case we have a pad abort. We also have a wave requirement for landing the booster and the wind requirement for landing the booster. So if you stack all of this up, that's why this is actually turning into a lot of weather science, and that's why we have Mike. Okay, good.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Yes, our next question comes from Emily Speck with WKMG. Your line is open.
Hi there. Thanks so much for doing this, you guys. A couple people could answer this question. During the dress rehearsal, I saw the SpaceX employees in the White Room, and they had these really interesting black clean suits on. Could you kind of talk a little bit about that and how working with SpaceX to prepare the astronauts for flight is maybe different with a commercial partner, or if at all?
Well, I think we're in a unique environment, right? One of the things that we have to be very careful about, and even if we weren't during this COVID period, is making sure that the crew's health is stable. We actually call it a health stabilization plan, and making sure that the crew is healthy and isn't going to be bringing some potential virus or anything up to the crew on station. Right, and so during normal times, this is a very serious process that people go through, and obviously in this period of COVID, it's even more serious. So those folks are outfitted in a particular way, really to ensure that the crew's protected. And Norm talked about the crew. The crew's been in quarantine now for 3 weeks. And during that period of time, we've been having to be very careful with them. They're like doing the ultimate quarantine. Some of us have been staying at home, but these folks, and all the people that have been interacting with them and working with them are suited and checked and nose swabbed and tested, and to make sure that Bob and Doug are going up to station safe. And so what you saw yesterday was the crew being outfitted in a way that is really about protecting Bob and Doug, and we prefer to call it looking like ninjas, that they look like ninjas there. So because, you know, with the SpaceX folks, you got to have it be looking cool, but they're really wearing outfits that are protecting Bob and Doug from them and any interaction.
Thank you so much.
Next question, please.
Yes, our next question comes from Dave Mosher with Business Insider. Your line is open.
Thank you for doing this, and best of luck on a launch. So this is for Hans. Your boss told Aviation Week, I think today, that his biggest worry, though very unlikely, was a rotation of the capsule during reentry and apparently some kind of overheating of the Draco escape thrusters. I'm curious what the number one thing is for you that keeps you up at night, however unlikely. And then as a sort of lighthearted exit, I'm really curious, my colleague is, where is it and what is it? Is it a hose hookup, or is it more of a throne like on the shuttle, or something we haven't seen before? Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'm not gonna. I don't know the potty answer to the potty question, so I'm going to skip that. But I can. Let's see. On the risk front, I mean, I work a lot with the risk on both vehicles. That is basically my job. I don't think there's anything that sticks out particularly. There's always things that we've worried, like, for example, the parachutes that are like discrete events that you can't really easily test. You pack those parachutes, and you pack them, you know, as carefully as you can, and then you randomly test them and do all these things. But at the end of the day, the ones that you actually packed and that are on the vehicle, you can't test those because then they are unpacked, right? So by definition, there are certain things that are really, I mean, other areas that are hard to test are pyrotechnics, right? I mean, you can only test like the brothers and sisters of the pyros that are on the vehicle, but you cannot test the one that are actually on the vehicle itself, for example. Then there's, you know, there's a whole slew of valves. There's like 200 valves on Falcon 9, and they all need to work. There's redundancy on it, but you know, there are some things like there's one MVAC, right, after all, and then this engine has to start, and there's like everything on the on the MVAC is doubled and triple, but at the end of the day, it's one thrust chamber and one nozzle, and all these things are boiling down to there's one capsule, right? There's not a second capsule. There's one air in there and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of things that you just carefully design and take all the precautions, and then you go forward with that. I'm pretty well, I shouldn't say I'm pretty confident. I should say pretty confident. You've done so many Falcon 9 launches, right? I mean, I feel pretty good about the rocket here, and so from that perspective, where I look at is actually stuff that's new on the vehicle, yeah. And in this case, the new part is Dragon. Crew Dragon rather. Crew Dragon has flown very well on the Demo 1 mission, so that takes a lot of the angst and the concern away on this mission. Actually, that was great. That mission was so super smooth, and it autonomously docked and undocked and came back and landed and did everything, and there was, so that basically that gave us great confidence in this design too. So, but there's always things that you know, like I said, the Eagler system, you will test this the first time on a microgravity for an extended period with Bob and Doug in there. Yeah? So those things are what keeps us up at night, basically.
Thank you.
I mean, to add to that a little bit, yeah, I'm at the point right now where I'm actually worried about the weather, and that's a good sign. So.
Thanks.
Our next question comes from Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. Your line is open.
Thanks very much. For Hans, how many vessels are going to be dispatched for both to support abort scenarios and for booster recovery? And have they already left, or is that something that's going to happen tomorrow? And are you likely to make a call about the weather based on the ship's deployment?
So we are about the drone ship left Cape Canaveral, but it's parked further north right now and waiting for the weather to be better. The other ships, I believe, are the one on the Florida West Coast is on its way, basically, and the other one I think is getting ready. So I think the fleet, as we call it, is about to get ready and move, but and partly already on the way. But that all assumes that Wednesday weather will clear up. Otherwise, they will just sit in their spot for a couple more days.
Thanks. And what about the NASA and any DoD ships? So how many total?
So we have 2 C-17s that are ready to go. We also have additional aircraft in New York and actually in England getting ready to help with if we need to do any rescue force locations. And we've been doing, our Det 3 folks have been doing training, water training and getting ready so that the PJs are ready if we have to do a rescue, that everybody's ready to go.
Thanks very much. Good luck.
Next question, please.
Yes, the next question comes from Stephen Clark with Space Flight Now. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Stephen Clark, Space Flight Now. To follow up on a couple earlier questions about weather, again, just curious. You have to have looked at this by now, I presume. How is the weather in sea states? How's the forecast looking for those downrange in the Atlantic on Wednesday right now, based on models, I guess? And if I could sneak a quick second one in, what's your next launch date after May 31st? Thanks.
Well, as far as the weather goes, it's it's getting a little bit far out to have a lot of confidence, but it certainly looks like the guidance is shaping up that the 30th and 31st look much less dynamic than what we have going on with a tropical low development across Florida and all that. So overall, those look like a better probability of launching and lower risk numbers across the Atlantic.
Yeah, and regarding the launch, the next launch after Demo 2, it's going to be Starlink 7. And it's at the very beginning of June. I don't know the exact date. It will also slip day for day, and it also depends a little bit on the availability on the drone ships when we can fly that. And Steve, for you, it's the launch time is 4:33:33.
Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Marina Corin with The Atlantic. Your line is open.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the update today. This question is for whoever knows the answer. Might be Norm. Norm, you said Bob and Doug will get up at 9 a.m. on Wednesday and have breakfast. What are they having for breakfast on the big day?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know what they're having for breakfast, but I assure you that our food service that are provided for the astronauts are really superior, and whatever they're having, I'm sure is very, very good. We have an opportunity to sample some of that stuff, and I can attest that it's well. So.
Okay. Will you let me know when you find out?
I will do so.
Thank you. Good luck.
Next question, please.
Yes, our next question comes from Christopher Costa with KHOU 11 News.
Hey there, everybody. Chris Costa from KHOU 11 News in Houston, Texas. First of all, just wanted to say good luck to all of you in the flight coming up on Wednesday. The big question I had was, what is it like to have humans, crew, operating a spacecraft that is operated by touchscreen? What's been your confidence in that as this has gone forward in its testing and verifications? And how are the astronauts feeling about using it? And is this the first time that touchscreen has been used in a human crewed mission?
Let's see, I'll jump in and then Hans, you can follow up. Touchscreens are, I mean, they're new, and you know, I would say that kind of winding back to the initial design, there was some reluctance with the test screen, you know, with the touch screens. How are these going to work? How can you have control of the vehicle with these things? Are they going to be reliable? But that technology over years has been proven. There was a lot of testing and evaluation that went into the ergonomics of those, the placement of what's on the displays, how those displays are presented to the crew, and then how the crew interacts with those displays. So, you know, over years, those things have been perfected. SpaceX has adjusted the design a little bit for the ergonomics, which was beneficial. And through training over and over, the crew has become comfortable with those, and we're comfortable with them flying. So, Hans, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. Two things. I drive a car with a touchscreen of a similar size, electric, of course. And I've found at the beginning you have to get used to it actually, but then you get into a technique that basically you put your hand around it, and that gives you the range of your thumb basically to press certain things. And after a couple of days driving the car, it gets basically automatic. And the same thing, I'm a pilot and fly airplanes that have touch screens too. That's actually a lot harder than on the car because sometimes it gets bumpy in airplanes. Now, if I translate that into a spacecraft, that should be a lot quieter, at least after the launch. So I would love to really test this and get an assessment between the three different categories of vehicles. But I guess I have to refer to basically asking Bob and Doug after the flight how it went.
But I do think people need to understand there's really, for everything that is in a dynamic situation, they have different controls.
Right.
So
Exactly.
They really had to think through, hey, under what conditions do we use touch screens? Under what conditions do we use buttons or have mechanical controls? And so the teams, and part of Bob and Doug and the team being there and being able to use their experience, they can talk about what parts of flight are dynamic so that they can have those additional controls and help them out.
And yeah, to get to your point, absolutely right. I mean, there's a couple super critical things, whatever, parachute deploy and things like that. Those are buttons and they're traditional buttons and secured and so that you don't bump into them and move them accidentally. So that's totally clear. I mean, the big advantage on the touch screen is also that you have a certain area and you can change what's on the screen, right? You can completely go from like the air condition over to the radio, over to vehicle systems without having like three displays at the same time. And you have so much more redundancy if you have three screens like we have. You basically need one of them at the end to control all functions on the spacecraft. So I personally think it's great. It's technology that will work well, and I'm looking forward to the results.
Thank you. We'll take one final question.
Yes, our last question comes from Andrea Leinfelder with Houston Chronicle. Your line is open.
Hi, guys. Thanks again for making the time. Good luck this week. So I saw the tweet today from Johnson Space Center about like the mission controls, and this is something obviously from Houston we've been focusing on. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. I know there's a very collaborative work between the three controls, but basically mission or SpaceX team in Firing 4 leads the countdown, and then SpaceX in Hawthorne leads, once the engines ignite all the way up through launch. And then Houston's Johnson Space Center leads as you approach the space station. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Yes, that's a fair way to characterize it. I would just say on the launch piece, there's also a NASA team. It's a mission management team that's working in concert with SpaceX because to be go for a launch, NASA has to have a go, SpaceX has to have a go, and the range, 45th Space Squadron has to have a go as well. So all three of those are required. So, but yeah, your characterization of that was correct.
Okay, so it'd be better to say SpaceX and NASA teams in firing room 4, then engines ignite, goes to SpaceX and Hawthorne, and then as it approaches the space station, Houston Johnson Space Center?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's also,
Okay.
I mean, it's interesting. I've been doing this for many years now, and between the handover is so smooth between the teams, and the way they cooperate is basically like this would be one room, and we have cameras. We can see the other room basically, and get a sense of what the vibe is basically in the room, and if there's any huddles in the corner or stuff like that. So I feel like this is basically a virtual environment that makes it one big control room.
But Andrea, just to be specific, you know, SpaceX does have a launch team working in firing room 4. SpaceX does have a mission control team at Hawthorne, and then of course there's the ISS mission control team in Houston. And you know, it's roles and responsibilities for each, as you articulated, up to the point that they get close to station, and then they're integrated into station as part of the overall mission control team from Houston. But we're all working together.
Yeah, gotcha. But so both SpaceX and NASA and firing room 4, though?
Well, it's a NASA
Or it is
team. It's not really a flight control team, it's a management team. So there's a NASA launch manager that provides the go for NASA. SpaceX has their team and Hans, correct me if I'm wrong, flight control team with their launch director that is working in concert with Hawthorne to give a go. And then the range, if the range is good, the range provides a go. But SpaceX is controlling the vehicle. There's no fluff about that.
Yeah, the launch director is here in firing 4. And by the way, it's an honor to be in this room. I mean, this is the old Apollo and you know, shuttle control launch center basically, and it always amazes me when I go into this building. And the mission director for Dragon from the SpaceX side is in Hawthorne. Yeah.
Okay, that's all the time we have for today. Our next event is at 10 a.m. tomorrow with NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, Kennedy Space Center Director Bob Cabana, and NASA astronauts Jel Lindgren and Nicole Mann. This event, originally planned for the countdown clock, will now be inside the Kennedy Auditorium due to weather. We will have a phone bridge available for media to dial in and ask questions. Please send a note to ksc-newsroom@mail.nasa.gov no later than 1 hour prior to the event. NASA's SpaceX Demo 2 mission is targeting a launch to the International Space Station on Wednesday, May 27th at 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time at Launch Complex 39A from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We will have live launch coverage starting at 12:15 p.m. We will have more to come on this important mission, so follow us online, through social media, and NASA television. You can also learn more about the mission at www.nasa.gov/commercial crew. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.